and welcome. Tonight, on the fourth day of the nationwide protest, the president addresses the nation. President Bola Tinubu asks protesters to suspend their demonstrations, says he is always ready for dialogue. Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka says President Tinubu's speech did not address brutal crackdown on protesters. A senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, concurs and says that the presidential speech falls short of addressing the key demand of the protesters. And hoodlums chase away end bad governance protesters who gathered around the Gani Fawemi Park in the Ojota area of Lagos. We begin tonight with a broadcast by the president, delivered on the fourth day of an ongoing nationwide protest, characterized by violence unleashed by hoodlums in the northern region, apathy in the southern region, and vocal protestations in the southwest and south-south region. President Bola Tinubu, in a 20-minute-long speech, bemoaned the violence unleashed by hoodlums, commiserating with the families of those who lost their lives. Nigeria's #1 citizen appeals to protesters to suspend the ongoing protests and dialogue with the federal government instead. He also spoke on several issues, including the reasons why fuel subsidy is no longer an option and several interventions put in place by his administration to soften the harsh economic environment. The president went on to ask security operatives to continue to secure lives and property, but insists that his administration will not tolerate anarchy and ethnic bigotry.
The national anthem heralds the president's broadcast. His address to the nation beginning with his rejection of the carnage by hoodlums that trailed the ongoing protests.
I speak to you today with a heavy heart and sense of responsibility, aware of the turmoil and violent protests unleashed in some of our states. Notably, among the protesters were young Nigerians who desired a better and more progressive country where their dreams, hope, and personal aspiration would be fulfilled. I am especially pained by the loss of lives in Borno, Jigawa, Kano, Kaduna, and other states, the destruction of facilities in some states, and the wanton looting of supermarkets and shops, contrary to the promise of protest organizers that the protest will be peaceful across the country. The destruction of properties set us back as a nation, as scarce resources will be again used to restore them. I commiserate with the families and relations of those who have died in the protest. We must stop further bloodshed, violence, and destruction.
The scars of the destruction by hoodlums, acts of lawlessness by miscreants, and the tensions that followed are issues Nigeria's #1 citizen insists will not be allowed to fester. And for the protesters urged by hardship and desirous for change, President Tinubu calls for discourse and seeks a suspension of the demonstrations.
Under the circumstances, I hereby enjoin protesters and the organizers to suspend any further protest and create room for dialogue, which I have always acceded to at the slightest opportunity. Nigeria requires all hands on deck and need us all, regardless of age, party, tribe, religion, or other divides. So those who have taken undue advantage of this situation to threaten any section of this country, be warned. The law will catch up with you. There is no place for ethnic bigotry or such threats in the Nigeria we seek to build.
One of the demands of the protesters is the return of fuel subsidy. The president explains the reasons behind its removal and the gains that has been made so far.
I therefore took the painful yet necessary decision to remove fuel subsidy and abolish multiple foreign exchange system, which had constituted a noose around the economic jugular of our nation and impede our economic development and progress. These actions block the greedy and the profit that smugglers and rent seekers made. They also block the undue subsidy we had extended to our neighboring countries to the detriment of our people, rendering our economy prostrate. We have also embarked on major infrastructure projects across the country. We are working to complete inherited projects critical to our economic prosperity, including roads, bridges, railways, power, and oil and gas development.
President Tinubu insists he has a listening ear and feels the frustrations of Nigerians, but believes that the people should collectively work with his government to ensure change.
My dear Nigerians, especially our youths, I have heard you loud and clear. I understand the pain and the frustration that drive this protest, and I want to assure you that our government is committed to listening and addressing the concerns of our citizens. But we must not let violence and destruction tear our nation apart. We must work together to build a brighter future where every Nigerian can live with dignity and prosperity. The task before us is a collective one, and I am leading the charge as your president. A lot of work has gone into stabilizing our economy, and I must stay focused on ensuring that the benefits reached every single Nigerian as we promised. My administration is working very hard to improve and expand our national infrastructure and create more opportunities for our young people. Let nobody misinform and miseducate you about your country or tell you that your government does not care about you.
He concludes his address by urging security operatives to continue to maintain peace, law and order while adhering to the necessary conventions on human rights to which Nigeria is a signatory.
Following the broadcast by the Nigerian president, where he appealed to all protests be stopped and suspended, and also that ethnic bigotry will not be allowed, as he is open to dialogue, well, some Nigerians have been reacting to that broadcast. They berate the speech by the president, claiming that he did not address the main issues that led to the nationwide protests in the first instance, describing it as another forum of campaign targeted at politicians and not those who yearn for a better life. They add that they are not ready for the dialogue. Our correspondent Emanuela Ekele reports.
Thursday, August 1, 2024, is a day that has been etched in history as one where Nigerians took their destiny in their hands, demanding for better living conditions from the authorities. From Lagos to Abuja, to the southwest, the south-south and northern states, Nigerians defied all odds and marched through the streets, asking the federal and state governments to reverse its policies and give them a better economy.
My fellow Nigerians, I speak to you today
4 days after President Bola Tinubu speaks to the nation in a broadcast, presenting a scorecard on a range of issues like the economy, infrastructure, agriculture, oil and gas. This, however, is unappealing to some Nigerians, as they say the president did not tackle the main issues, such as fuel subsidy removal that is impacting negatively on the well-being of the people.
In his speech, the president referred to CNG kits, Now I ask you, we heard before that our 4 refineries will be back to work. We heard that Dangote refinery has come on stream. So if the 4 refineries and Dangote refinery which has come on stream, why are we then spending billions and trillions on CNG? Now, the CNG kits, are we producing in Nigeria? No. We still require cash foreign exchange to bring in the CNG kits.
They turned down the olive branch for dialogue extended by the president, stating that the protest continues.
Why will anybody want to dialogue with a president that did not even acknowledge that people died? That is not holding the security agencies accountable for people dying. The president has not said, oh, give me 3 weeks, I will meet the demand.
The Arawa group also distanced itself from the photos of the Russian flag being displayed in some parts of the north.
If you watch what is going on now at the social media, some people carrying a flag of Russia. They are not part of us. They are not the protesters.
Some, however, appeal to Nigerians to be patient with the president to solve the challenges facing the country.
Policies have been enacted, and he has started doing everything that requires to be done to make sure that the impact of these policies are mitigated. And he went ahead today in his speech to repeat them one after the other.
Many are watching as the week begins if the government and the protesters will find a common ground and have the demands of the protesters resolved, or what will transpire after the protest comes to an end on August 10th. Emanuela Ekele, Channels Television News.
Well, more reactions are still trailing President Bola Tinubu's nationwide address, this time from Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka. A statement issued by Professor Soyinka says that the president's address failed to address the attacks on end bad governance protesters by security agencies. The statement reads in part, "My primary concern, quite predictably, is by continuing deterioration of the state seizure of protest management, an area in which the presidential address fell conspicuously short. Such shortchanging of civic deserving regrettably goes to arm the security forces in the exercise of impunity and condemns the nation to a seemingly unbreakable cycle of resentment and reprisals. Live bullets, a state response to civic protest that becomes the core issue. Even tear gas remains questionable in most circumstances, certainly an abuse in situations of clearly peaceful protest." End of quote. The Nobel laureate adds that the tragic response to the ongoing hunger marches in parts of the nation and far for notice which was served constitutes a retrogression that takes the nation even further back than the deadly culmination of the watershed NSARS protest. Professor Soyinka notes that the nation's security agencies cannot pretend unawareness of alternative models of emulation, civilized advances in security intervention. And staying with the nationwide broadcast, senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, has faulted the president's address to the nation today. In a statement he issued, Mr. Falana says the presidential speech delivered this morning fell short of addressing the key demands of the protesters, reversal of the policy of withdrawal of fuel subsidy. Part of the statement also reads, "If the government takes the fight against corruption to oil dealers and crude oil is processed in government-owned refineries, there will be no basis for fuel subsidy, which is induced by importation of petroleum products. A positive response to the key demands of the youth to review the protesters could make them review their action. Insensitivity to their demands can only provoke continued action." End of quote. While congratulating the protesters for drawing the attention of politicians, the senior advocate of Nigeria demanded the immediate and unconditional release of all protesters that were arrested and detained, saying that they had not committed any criminal offense. He also condemned the repression of the peaceful protesters while commiserating with all those who lost their loved ones in the protest and asking government to set up commissions of inquiry to bring justice to those responsible for the reckless killing. Well, more reactions have continued to trail this, and this one is coming from the opposition party, the People's Democratic Party. It has labeled the speech of End Bad Governance protesters as a distraction. In a statement issued by the party's National Publicity Secretary, Debo Ologunagba, the PDP says the speech failed to address the protesters' concern. Mr. Ologunagba also states that President Tinubu's speech clearly demonstrates the All Progressives Congress, the APC's administration's insensitivity towards Nigerians and the dire situation in the country. The PDP is now asking the president to reduce the size of government and cut spending on luxury items to free up more resources for immediate efforts to improve the well-being of Nigerians. In part two, after the break, the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, writes the Commonwealth demands action against Nigerian authorities over attacks on journalists and end bad governance protesters. Please join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, coming to you live on Channels Television from Lagos. A reminder of our main stories. On the fourth day of the nationwide protest, the president addresses the nation. President Bola Tinubu asks protesters to suspend their demonstrations, says he is always ready to dialogue. Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka says President Tinubu's speech did not address brutal crackdown on protesters. A senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, concurs, insists that the presidential speech fell short of addressing the key demands of the protesters. And hoodlums chase away end bad governance protesters who gathered around the Gani Fawemi Park in the Ojota area of Lagos. We continue with reactions which were fast coming just about an hour after the president's speech. Some protesters in Lagos gathered in Ojota, insisting that the president's speech did not capture core issues raised by them. But events at the protest ground took a different turn when hoodlums chased the protesters away. Our correspondent Dare Idowu reports.
Early on Sunday morning, shortly after the president's nationwide address, these protesters, a handful of them, returned to the protest ground. They say the president did not address core issues raised by them.
Why are we dying? Why Boko Haram? Why Boko Haram?
Free-flowing traffic. Today, there are way more policemen than protesters.
Good morning, everybody. Calm down, calm down.
A lawyer who simply wants to be identified as JP came to address the protesters to suspend the protest.
Since the president has spoken this morning, 7 o'clock, let us all wait. When it is October 1st, he has not implemented what he said he's going to do. Definitely will carry out the protest again.
But that didn't go well with the group.
We have had the president's speech. We have had the president's speech. I said, let other leaders come here with discourse and respond appropriately. That's all. Leave the police. Let them be where they are.
So let me tell them that you are coming.
At about 11 a.m., the police also stepped in to speak to the small group of protesters. The police say it's time to go home.
What happened in some other states, we don't want it to happen in Lagos. Yes. If you know you love Lagos and you love Nigeria, please go home now.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Shortly after the police intervention, a group the protesters believe are state-sponsored came from the other side of the road to drive the protesters away.
Almost attacking it's an object. And why you guys are watching? Why are you here? The soldiers are here also. Why are you here if you cannot protect us? You are being funded by taxpayers' money.
Some of the protesters' demands include the restoration of petrol subsidies, a decision the president said is painful but necessary. The protesters also want the government to address food shortages, unemployment, and the wasteful spending in government. Dare Idowu, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the Lagos State Governor, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, has expressed appreciation to the protesters in Lagos for their peaceful conduct and the announcement of an end to their action following the broadcast by President Bola Tinubu. The governor, in a statement issued by the Commissioner for Information and Strategy, Gbenga Omotosho, praised the leaders of the protests in Lagos, describing their action as an affirmation that their collective voice has been heard by the government. In demonstration of the Lagos State government's commitment to continuous engagement with the youth, Governor Sanwo-Olu directed the Ministries of Youth and Social Development, Information and Strategy, as well as the Office of Civic Engagement, to immediately open wider channels of engagement with various stakeholders, including the protest leaders. He also enjoined all Lagosians to continue their businesses without fear. For protesters in Plateau State, they had the Sunday worship service at the old airport roundabout, where protesters have been gathering since the commencement of the protest in the fourth day. The worship service was attended by both Christians and Muslims, was a replica of last Friday Jamaat's prayers offered by Muslim faithful at the same venue. With an increase in the number compared to the previous gathering, the protesters temporarily converted the venue to a temple with praises and worship songs marking the day on day 4. But the protesters are not impressed with the president's broadcast on Sunday morning, which they claim did not address issues raised by the agitators.
Can I invite you to a place of action? Nigeria belongs to you. You and I must begin to tell one another that we must hold our government to account. They must account for our common resources. If you think we are antagonizing you, then respond to our needs. We are thankful to the president for addressing the nation today. But his address is below the belt. He did not address us. You are a father. We know you have conscience. We know you love the people. When you said when you said it is my turn, it is because you believe you have something to give to us, your children. It is time for you to do that, and it is time for you to begin to look into your ranks.
To alleviate the pains of Nigerians, but today what he just did was just to gloss over it.
Well, the End Bad Governance protest continued day 4 in Port Harcourt, the River State capital. Though the turnout was quite scanty compared to 3 previous days, the protesters still made their voices heard as they camped out in front of the Federal Secretariat. The partially blocked part of the Aba Road flyover with the bathtub, chanting and singing. There was no DJ or musical instrument today, and some of them could be heard saying that the president's Tinubu speech failed to address their concerns. As such, they are ready to see out the protest for the full 10 days as originally planned. While there was significant security presence, there was no confrontation between the police and the protesters, as interactions between both parties remained cordial as before. Meanwhile, the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, has sent an appeal to the Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Patricia Scotland, asking her to apply the Commonwealth Charter to hold the Nigerian authorities to account over reports of attacks on journalists covering the End Hunger protest and peaceful protests in some parts of the country. SERAP is asking Ms. Scotland to apply the Commonwealth Charter to press these demands thoroughly and impartially, independently, transparently, and effectively investigate reports of attacks on journalists covering the protests in Nigeria and on the peaceful protesters. The right groups is asking her to press this and make sure the violations of domestic law and international standards and those found culpable are held to account. Let's head to Yobe State now. In Yobe, it has approved a review of the curfew imposed on the 3 towns by 5 hours. The state governor, Maib Malabuni, says that the review follows a considerable improvement in the security situation in Potiskum, Gashua, and Nguru in Yobe State. The press release issued by the Special Advisor to the Governor on Security Matters, Brigadier General Dahiru Abdulsalam, says the curfew is now relaxed from 12 noon to 5 p.m. for people to undertake lawful activities with effect from Sunday, August the 4th. The statement also adds that the security agencies have been directed to maintain the current level of security alertness and ensure that no space is given to hoodlums and miscreants to perpetrate any acts of lawlessness during the curfew relaxation period. As for Gombe State, in a sheer display of resilience, residents putting the August 1st peaceful protest turn Ori behind. But they have, as evidenced by the business going into overdrive to recover lost ground. Business owners are saying that Governor Inuwa Yahaya's historic visit and the mega pep talk at the Gombe main market just one day after protest on Orai in that region inspired the confidence to resume their businesses. The Director General Press Affairs, Mr. Ismaila Uba, excused confidence in Gombe State's uncommon ability to pick up the pieces after the problem, saying that Gombe, the jewel of the Savannah's business drive, will not lose its steam as a destination of choice for investors.
Gombe State, fondly called the jewel in the Savannah, is known for its business-friendly atmosphere over the years. Governor Inuwa Yahaya's massive business policies lifted the state to higher heights, becoming a Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council's winner on the ease of doing business 2 times in a row, 2021 and 2022. Barely 24 hours after the August 1st End Bad Governance protests in the state, normalcy returns as the state governor encouraged members of the business community to bounce back even stronger.
No, there is peace in Gombe. There is no reason to put any curfew on the people who are already aggrieved, who are already hungry, and who are already angry. That is why we decided to make sure that they get opportunity to go and do their businesses.
Business activities have since gone into overdrive to recover lost ground, a situation which the government spokesperson describes as uncommon virtue of picking up the pieces.
No, you could see that Gombe State is always shining above other states, above its peers in many spheres, like you said, including infrastructure development, the building peace, human capital development, and the rest.
For business owners, Gombe State has been a place of peace, and the governor's move to reopen the markets is timely.
So any history of Gombe State, in terms of business, in terms of anything you call it, the handwriting of Igbo man will be there.
There's a scare that the protest will last for very long, and that will prevent one from really moving around to be able to get essential commodities. But after 2 days of the protest, the market seems to be open today, and people are moving about freely.
As you can see, almost everybody is just 1 or 2 shops in this whole line that they do not open. Everyone is back.
With Governor Inuwa Yahaya taking Gombe State's internally generated revenue from less than 300 million naira in 2019 to over 1 billion naira per month as at 2024, the informal sector remains a key catalyst in the economic growth of the state.
Still ahead on the news at 10, the NDLEA intercepts US-UK bound drugs concealed in baby food tins. Please join us again. Welcome back. One clear goal of the nationwide protest is to live a better Nigeria, in a better Nigeria. And tonight, our focus is how socio-economic data can be more effectively used to reduce the economic hardship and improve governance. Babajide Ogunsanwo, founder of Leadership by Data and Channels Television's data analyst, is here in our Abuja studios to share more insight about this. Hello, Babajide. It's good to have you on the news at 10. Some say that statisticians... Some say that statisticians like you provide the oxygen countries need for planning. But before we go into the role of statistics in reducing hardship, what is your take on the president's speech earlier today?
With reference to the president's speech, there are 2 years that I want you to quickly write down, 1942 and 1952. And I'll get back later to the importance of these 2 years, 1942 and 1952. Well, on this speech, yes, compared to the speech that happened under President Buhari during the NSAS protest, this speech was longer, 20 minutes, compared to the 11-minute speech President Buhari gave. We remember that under President Buhari during the NSAS protest, he sat down during this speech, and I'll talk later about the significance of President Tinubu standing up to speak.
But beyond all of this, and before we go much later into the context of this speech and thoroughly analyze it, the number one question on the lips of Nigerians is, did this speech resonate and connect with the majority of Nigerians? And at this point, I'd like us to take a look at the structure of Nigeria's demography, because it then allows us to understand who the Nigerian government and the president should be speaking to. Again, I talked about those years, 1942, the year former President Buhari was born, 1952, the year President Tinubu was born. Both presidents are classified under demography as baby boomers. Based on their date of birth, they represent only 7% of Nigeria's 240 million population. Looking at the style and wording of this speech, looking at the environment in which this speech happened, and looking at how the president delivered this speech, it does seem that the president really did not connect with the millennials and the who we call the Gen Z, the Generation Z, who represents the significant majority of the population. Again, former President Buhari and President Tinubu's age category fall within the baby boomers. And it did seem that most of this speech, the style, the delivery, will have connected more with those who classify as baby boomers and those Generation X. But again, baby boomers and Generation X represent only 20% of the population. And that is the challenge with this speech. Yes, there was good intent. However, the question is, 80% of today's Nigerians are classified as Generation Y, millennials, and Generation Z. And this speech significantly did not resonate strongly with them.
Rate or the GDP rate, what other tools can government actually use to be proactive in economic planning? And even now ask, will this new minimum wage significantly help in any way?
On this, there are three quick things I want to talk about. The first is on the minimum wage. There's really no such thing as a minimum wage anymore in Nigeria, and I'll explain why. We remember in April 2019 when President Buhari signed the minimum wage of 30,000 naira. Now in August, we've seen a 70,000 naira minimum wage. But not going by my statistics, going by the statistics of the National Bureau of Statistics. They say that between April 2019, when that 30,000 naira minimum wage was passed, and today, inflation rate approximately 165%. And in simple terms, you are better off earning a 30,000 naira minimum wage in April 2019 than earning a 70,000 naira minimum wage in August 2024. So the minimum wage in reality is an illusion. The second and perhaps more important point, and I would like you to carefully listen to this, is that the cost of a minimum living in Nigeria today is at its maximum. And that is the challenge Nigerians face. The cost of a minimum living is at its maximum. Now, what is the solution? The solution is we need to focus more on more practical data than theoretical data. And I'll give you an instance of this. We remember our musical professors in school. They understood the theory of music. However, what sort of songs do we listen and dance to? The Burna Boys, the Wizkids, the Davidos, the King Sunny Ades, and of course, the late Onyeka Onwenu. They were not music professors. They sang real music. By no stretch of the imagination am I discounting the relevance of theoretical economic principles in Nigeria. However, we need to now, more than ever, focus on real practical indicators. One way of measuring this is for us to take a look at how much do Nigerians spend? What is the minimum cost of a healthy diet in Nigeria? And again, the National Bureau of Statistics provides us some information. Looking at Lagos State, for instance, they say as at the beginning of this year, the minimum cost of a healthy diet for an adult family of 4 was 122,000 naira. That has increased now to 184,000 naira. Look at Abuja. As at January, the minimum monthly cost, again, these are minimum costs for a healthy diet for an adult family of 4 in Abuja. At the beginning of the year, 106,000 naira per month. That has grown to 167,000 naira per month. Again, look at what's going on in Kano. At the beginning of the year, it required approximately 78,000 naira minimum monthly cost for a healthy diet for a family of 4 living in Kano, that has grown to more than 100,000 naira. That is one instance of real practical data. And though, yes, the theoretical data still remain important in Nigeria, we have now gradually moved into a season, into an era where local, states, and federal governments need to focus more on practical data. And of course, we are here to develop all those statistical models that can assist them to focus more on the practical data.
But is there any evidence that states are now using the extra money they now receive from the Federation to improve security and welfare?
And it also depends on, first, do you agree if the states have received or are receiving more money, or are they really receiving less? And there are two perspectives, looking at it from the Naira perspective and the dollar perspective. So I'd like us to take a look at that question. Are states really receiving more money from the Federation account? Because it's all an illusion, the illusion of more money. Here's what I mean. In the first 6 months of 2022, Northern Nigeria received 521 billion naira. In the first 6 months of this year, that has grown to 1 trillion naira. That seems to be a significant jump. Same thing, Southern Nigeria, first 6 months of 2022, 849 billion naira. First 6 months of this year, 1.6 trillion naira. If you look at those two periods, January 2022 to January 2024, it makes you seem and believe that, yes, Northern Nigeria has significantly gotten more money compared to 2022, and Southern Nigeria has significantly gotten more money compared in this year compared to 2022. But that is if you focus on just the Naira perspective. The Naira perspective creates an illusion of more money. If, however, you look at the dollar perspective, which is in front of us, you realize that 2022 compared to 2024, in dollar terms, the states had significantly more money. What I mean in simple terms, Anne, is that the purchasing power parity, the purchasing power of the Naira is significantly reducing. So in Naira terms, the states, yes, are seeing a lot more money from the Federation account. Or can this Naira purchase things that they would have done in 2022? And in the final analysis, it's now a dozen years, past 4 decades, exactly around this period, the great legend Fela Kuti was about to release a song, When Trouble Sleep, Yanga Go Wake 'Em. In Nigeria today, trouble is sleeping, and it's important that the government doesn't wake it up. At the very least, the government should give this trouble a softer bed and perhaps a much softer pillow. Anne.
All right, thank you very much. Founder of Leadership by Data and Channels Television's data analyst, Babajide Ogunsawo. Thanks a lot for your exciting view on the news at 10.
Pleasure is all mine, Anne.
Let's move to other stories. Former military head of state Ibrahim Babangida has denied a parody on social media about his endorsement of military rule over democratic governance. The parody general account, General Ibro on X, formerly Twitter, falsely attributed comments to General Babangida, suggesting he preferred military rule to democracy. In a statement signed by Mahmoud Abdullahi for the IBB Media Office, General Babangida emphasized his commitment to Nigeria's democratic process, stating that democracy has come to stay. The office expressed frustration over their inability to get the parody account removed or sanctioned and warned the public to disregard any post from that account claiming to represent General Babangida's opinions. Multiple consignments of illicit drugs concealed in tins of baby food and clothes en route to the United States and United Kingdom have been intercepted by operatives of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, the NDLEA, at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport and a courier firm in Lagos. A statement signed by the head of media and advocacy for the agency, Mr. Femi Babafemi, says that 36 parcels of a strong strain of cannabis concealed in 6 cartons of tins of baby food with 6 containers in each package were recovered at the Sakol export shed of Lagos Airport on Wednesday, July the 31st, 2024. The statement adds The freight agent, Salaudeen Abiola, who presented that consignment for export to the UK, was promptly arrested, while a follow-up operation to Ibadan, the Oyo State capital, on Saturday led to the arrest of the sender of the cargo, Bello Folu, at her number 20 Mofoluwasho estate in Elewuro in Akobo area of Oyo State. According to that statement, the tins were all factory sealed at the top, while they tampered with the bottom, through which they put the substances covered with loose quantities of the infant cereal meal to prevent discovery. The statement further adds that 5 different shipments of opioids and other psychoactive substances such as promethazine, pentazocine, diazepam, tramadol, and morphine, all concealed in clothes and other items meant for export to the US and UK, were also intercepted by the NDLEA operatives in Lagos. Let's head over to Kogi State now, where the governor, Mr. Usman Ododo, is asking youths in the state to play their roles as critical stakeholders in shaping the country's future. The governor was speaking while declaring open a 2-day youth engagement summit in Lokoja, the state capital.
Amidst the ongoing protests in some parts of the country, Kogi youth are converged at the glass hall of the Government House Lokoja for a youth engagement summit with the theme, The Role of Nigerian Youth in Nation Building. Gathered here are top government functionaries, members of the state legislature, academia, youth leaders, and Kogi State Governor Usman Ododo. The Youth Summit is organized to engage, share ideas, and chart a course for the prosperous future for the youth in Kogi State.
In these challenging times, the role of the youth in nation building cannot be overemphasized. Our country is at a crossroad, and it is your energy, creativity, and passion that can drive us towards a brighter tomorrow. However, it is important to channel these qualities constructively in ways that contribute to the stability and progress of our nation.
Midway into the event, Governor Ododo relocates from his seat and joins the youth for several hours until the Speaker, Kogi State House of Assembly, rules for him to return to his seat.
Back to his seat for the business of the day.
The guest speaker, Professor Rotimi Ajayi, warns against indulgence in social vices and also appeals to the youth to focus on hard work in the quest to move the state forward.
As youths, we must be more visionary and committed to our vision realization. We must be able to tap our potentials for productive engagements. We must be patriotic and committed to service. Our integrated role in the society must not be lost. We must emphasize issues that bind us together as a state and as a nation. Our criticisms of government must be constructive and not destructive. We must have a positive change mentality so that we don't just see everything negative about our government.
The governor does not align with the nationwide protest, preferring constructive dialogue instead.
It is unfair to ask questions about over 60 years of mismanagement and expect answer in a year. Our president is working hard and the benefits are already pouring in. We will surely turn this corner. As youth of our dear state, I am proud to say you are the shining light for the rest of the nation. Events like this set a new agenda for the leaders. Instead of protesting violently and looting shops and putting many lives in harm's way, you have chosen to organize this summit to contribute your own quotas to nation building.
The governor believes President Bola Tinubu's administration has initiated policies and programs that will uplift the youth and asks them to support the administration.
The promoters of the unnecessary protests are turning logic on the head. A country that is just healing from years of illness cannot afford violent protests now. We all witnessed what happened to us with youth during the answers. And we will not want Nigeria to collapse into such darkness again.
Governor Ododo also promises to increase youth representation in his cabinet, recalling that he had already appointed many young individuals since taking office.
Tagged the largest collection of preserved ancient wood structure in the world, the Forbidden City has become one of China's biggest tourist centers. Not only does it attract a lot of guests from across the world, it has also become a place of pilgrim sort of for locals who show up in their hundreds daily. In our next report, our correspondent Amarachi Ubani, who is in China, takes a look at the history of a revered place turned national museum with a notorious name.
It's the thick of summer in the People's Republic of China, and it has encouraged a beehive of activities around tourist spots in the country. Here in the capital city, Beijing, the human traffic appears to funnel in one of the directions, the location of the World Heritage Site listed in 1987, the Forbidden City. The stream of people consists mainly of the Chinese, either in small groups or families, and they troop in to see a part of history that has been standing for over 5 centuries. So how did a glaring architectural masterpiece get labeled forbidden?
Why this place is called Forbidden City? Yes, long years ago, this district was an imperial place. Ordinary people were not allowed to go inside, so it's forbidden. Okay, Forbidden City was first built in 1406 by Emperor Zhu Di, who is the 3rd emperor of Ming Dynasty. Yes, that guy decided to move the capital from southern China to northern China.
Built from 1406 to 1420 by almost 1 million workers, the city reigned as the political and ceremonial seat of power for China.
Where was the emperor staying? First for offices of emperor. Behind it is a living area. So you can see there are some small palaces. For his birthday, she would receive gifts from here. Now behind it, there are small.
While it served as home for the emperor and his immediate family, it was also the place where he, alongside his cabinet and military hierarchy, hosted important national events. It was a glorious space which became prime target in times of war.
Forbidden City suffered so much in history. Now, first time in 1860, Anglo and French Allied forces invaded China. They launched the Second Opium War. Forbidden City was burned by fire. Okay, almost all the treasures were robbed by them. So if you like to watch Chinese treasures, I recommend you go to British Museum. There are so much.
The architecture remains the same, even though some maintenance work is carried out as required. Today, it is not only a place that is shown off to tourists to take beautiful pictures for social media, it also serves as a big history lesson for the younger Chinese generation.
Okay, we can see some students group over here. Nowadays, we emphasize the Chinese culture now in education. Yes, so now each student need to learn traditional culture. It's very helpful for them. Yes, actually, it's very interesting. I remember when I was a boy, I visited Forbidden City. Now some guys, took a rock T-shirt of Beatles, Michael Jackson, Queen, and so on. So you can see the conflict between Chinese culture and the Western culture. So nowadays, we have developed so much. Now people begin to realize that now how about the meaning for Chinese. So now government and some department emphasize the traditional culture education.
And they're happy to share this history and heritage with the rest of the world as they remain friendly and warm towards all tourists.
And the main news again. On the fourth day of the nationwide protest, the president addressed the nation. President Bola Tinubu asked protesters to suspend their demonstrations as he is always ready to dialogue. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Have a wonderful week ahead. Good night.